Hey everyone, so today we're going to continue with our financial model using Monte Carlo simulation, and today we're going to look at the three-stage dividend discount model or discounted cash flow model. And this model is just taking in, just like its name says, three different stages of growth or value in the company to arrive at the present value of the company or stock today. So again, what we're going to do here is we're going to assume that we're going to value the S&P 500. And I believe last year I gave out $163 in dividends. That may include buybacks, I'm not entirely sure. And we're going to look at different growth rates, and we're going to grow them at different time periods. So we have a GL, that's going to be our long-term growth rate. We also have a short-term growth rate, two short-term growth rates. We have GS1 and GS2. So what we're going to assume here is that for the long-term growth rate, we're going to assume a 2.5% growth rate. That's in line with GDP growth for the United States. And in the short term, we're going to assume that we're going to have a negative 5% growth. And in the intermediate term, we're going to have a back to 2.5% growth. So we'll play around with these, change different variables. We're going to assume the standard deviations for each of these are going to be extremely low. We'll change them later to model our variation. And keep in mind, when we're modeling these ideas and coming up with the variance, sometimes we're going to look in the historical data set. We're going to look at similar companies or similar time periods, and we'll look at the variation, and we may use that and project that into the future. All right, so I ran through that. We're going to assume that our required rate of return is 8%. We're going to have an N of 10, which will give our half-life of 5 in this example, and we're just going to run through this 10,000 different times. For each of the growth rates, we're going to assume normal distributions, and let's run this. So I just want to just run right through this, see how this works, how this goes. There we go. There it is. There is our Monte Carlo simulation, and we've plotted this distribution. You can see the value where they fall. We can look at the mean, the standard deviation, max, min. And this does look normally distributed. So let's start on the median. So remember, let's throw this in first. So remember, 68% of the values are going to rely within one standard deviation of the mean. So plus or minus 59 here. And 95% of the observations are going to fall within 2 times 59, which would be 120 plus or minus of the mean. So you'll notice here that we have different growth rates or different periods given this three-stage model. And what we're modeling here is we have a short-term growth rate here. This is for the short-term period, and that will give us a value of V1. Okay, that's for the short-term growth of GS1. And then we're also modeling another growth period here called VS, and that is taking our second growth rate, short-term growth rate, and linearly decreasing it. It's essentially just the H model, and linearly decreasing it to or increasing it to our GL, which is our long-term growth rate. So we have VS. And then we're going to also take a look at VL, which is our long-term growth rate in the long term, the value of our long term. So if we take VS plus VL, we find V2, and we have to discount that back by R, and then we're just adding V2 to V1 to get V naught. And we're modeling this out. So what happens if we start changing some of these growth rates? So let's assume that, in the long term, fine, we'll say 2.5% earnings or dividends will approximate that growth in the long term. But let's say, we believe, okay, we're going to have a drop in growth, in dividend growth of 5% starting now. But maybe we think that's going to continue. So let's say that maybe it'll be negative 0.25, okay? And we assume that, it's going to take, n's not going to be 5, but it's going to be closer to 1.5. So what happens then? Let's model that out. Okay, so you notice the value has changed. It's much lower because we've decreased our growth for a longer period of time. What happens if we model out, let's say this takes even longer. So we say we're going to have negative growth for the first two short-term periods. Eventually it's going to get to 2.5, but say, if it takes 10, it's going to take a half-life of 10 for the longer period, for the linear growth period. So you see what you can do here. We can model different things and let's say that we are not too sure about this growth rate during this period. We believe it's going to have a higher standard deviation. What happens then? Let's take a look. So you can see that we can model different scenarios given different growth rates of what we believe the future is going to behold, and using the power of these financial models and Monte Carlo simulation. So if you like this video, please subscribe. In our next videos, I'm probably going to look at different financial models. We're going to look at financial modeling using linear regression, which is a different approach to using these forms of dividend cash flow models and discounted cash flow models. So if you like this video, please subscribe. Till next time, guys. Thanks.